Morning, everyone. We are going to continue our devotional today looking at Nehemiah chapter 4. Nehemiah chapter 4 in the Old Testament. So Nehemiah is a book about a man who was leading Israel at a time of great devastation. The city had been destroyed for close to, well over 70 years. And the walls had been destroyed. The temple had been destroyed. And in Ezra, the temple is rebuilt. Now in Nehemiah, the walls around Jerusalem are being rebuilt. And we've looked at the first few chapters and learned some incredible lessons. Now in chapter 4, the opposition to Nehemiah is intensified, right? So we all will experience opposition, tension, struggles, hurdles. Very rarely does everything go exactly the way we want it to go, right? With no problems at all. And when everything's going good, we almost think this is too easy. Something's going to happen soon. Well, in chapter 4, let's read together. So Nehemiah chapter 4, starting in verse 1. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews. And in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish it in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What they are building, even a fox climbing upon it would break down their wall of stones." Right. So first thing that's happening, we already heard about them in chapter 1 and 2, right? As soon as he arrives, these men are mentioned as they're not happy about the fact that it says that someone has come to seek the welfare of Jerusalem and of Israel. So far, all of their attacks or opposition has been verbal, right? They're ridiculing them, they're mocking them, they're making fun of them, not just criticizing. Now, I have been amazed, even with myself, but probably more amazed because of how common it is that I think I don't know if it's a majority, but I know that it's a lot of us. How quickly we abandon something, how quickly we will give up on something or stop doing something because of what other people think, because of what other people say. If people don't agree, then we get discouraged so quickly and stop. And you know what I'm talking about. It doesn't take much for a lot of people to stop doing what they're doing that they want to do because others are criticizing it. And when it gets to this point of ridiculing, of mocking them, and this is all getting back to Nehemiah. So what does Nehemiah do? Verse 4, hear us. So he prays. Again, everything Nehemiah isn't presented as this incredible man of prayer, right? But he is constantly praying. He is constantly going to God and bringing to the Lord the needs and the situations that he's facing. So hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. So Nehemiah, he is he's a tough guy, right? He's not a pushover, and he's not going to back down. He prays, and he doesn't insult them back. You notice that he doesn't insult them back. He doesn't say anything back to them. He goes to God. There's an incredible lesson there, right? When people attack or criticize us, to not immediately begin to criticize them back and ridicule them, and like Jesus says, not return evil with evil. He goes to God, and there's no indication that he says anything to these people at this point. Look at verse 6. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. So verse 6 is very interesting because what follows now, it's almost like, how does what happens next come from verse 6? Because it says they're being ridiculed, right? There's opposition, but Nehemiah continues to focus them on the building. So they're able to build a wall halfway up, and it says they're working with all their heart. So the people aren't focusing on what's being said to them. And the main reason is because of the leadership of Nehemiah. Because when they're being ridiculed, when they're being discouraged, What counters that is the encouragement of their leader, right? The encouragement of Nehemiah saying, no, we will continue. We will have faith. We will rebuild. We're not going to listen to what these people are saying. But now let's see verse 7. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. Right? So this is going on. It's continuing to go on. They get angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. Verse 9, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. So again, now it's going beyond ridicule, beyond words, right? That hasn't slowed them down. The wall and the work is continuing on. So now they're plotting to come and fight, to attack them physically. And Nehemiah is made aware of it. So he prays again, but we prayed. And remember, what we're learning from Nehemiah is he doesn't just pray and sit and wait. He prays and then he steps out in faith. He prays and then he steps out in action, believing that God is going to meet their need. So he prays and then he posts a guard day and night to meet the threat. So a lot of times, again, there's a combination in our faith and in our walk, in our life, of faith and prayer, and then our responsibility to act on that, right? So to not be just so passive. But what is the threat that we need to meet? Let's pray about it. Let's surrender to God. Let's hear from God what we should do. But then let's act and meet the threat. Whatever the threat is that we're facing in our lives, the economy, your health, your family, your neighbors, whatever it is. How do you meet the threat? Prayer first. But then there's something you should also do to meet the threat. Not just put it in God's hands, but then also act upon what God has said and how he's directing. But now here's the part again, which is fascinating, because in verse 6 it says that they were very encouraged as they were working. Because they worked well their heart. And in verse 10, meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Wait a second. They were encouraged. They were working with all their heart. That's very quickly they got the wall halfway built. So what happens is when you see things happening, when everybody's working together, that does encourage you, and you're able to kind of trump or overcome or ignore the accusations, the oppositions that's coming at you. But when the opposition is increased, then again there are moments, almost like exits on a highway, where people will say, okay, I can take some ridicule. I can take some mocking, especially since the leader is in charge and he's confident and everyone is still working. But when the opposition is greater and greater, those moments when people say, okay, this is too much for me, I'm out. I'm going to take off. I didn't sign up for this. So there are moments when the opposition gets severe enough, and that's the whole goal of opposition, of mocking, to increase until you stop doing what it is that God has called you to do. So they were encouraged, but now when they heard, oh, wait a minute, this is going to get real, this is going to get physical, they're going to come and attack us. Now people lost their strength, and why? Verse 10, because they were focusing on the rocks. Apparently it didn't seem to bother them before, yet there's a whole mess of rocks everywhere. There's rubble. But they weren't focusing on the rubble. They were focusing on how much they had built, right? In verse 6, they're not focusing on the mess. They're focusing on what they've been able to accomplish. So I see my little dog right there. They're focusing on what they've been able to accomplish. And they're encouraged because they see what they're building. They don't see what has been destroyed. Now they're not focusing on what's been built. They're focusing on what has been destroyed. They're focusing on the rubble. They're focusing on the mess, instead of focusing on the accomplishments, on the blessing that God is bringing. If you focus on the rocks, right, so you're always going to be focusing on the mess instead of the accomplishments or what God has allowed you to do so far, right? So then, and it's not just that, verse 11, also our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work, right? So the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Right? So they're sitting here. Now we know exactly why. Why are they not focusing on the wall and what they've accomplished, but rather on the rubble? Right there it tells us. The real reason is that they continue to attack them, to come against them. And it says, right, we're going to come, we're going to kill you, and wherever you turn, they told them 10 times over, wherever you turn, they're going to attack you. So this is real. This is a real threat. They're hearing it constantly, and they're being discouraged. But verse 13, therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall, the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords and spears and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord. Okay, that's kind of like prayer. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, for your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. Right? So he's letting them know this is what you need to be doing. He doesn't back down. He encourages them again. He unifies them and says, remember what you need to be doing. You need to be fighting because what's at stake? Right? What's at stake if we allow them to win, if we allow them to discourage us and defeat us? Our families, our safety, our future is what is at stake. And it's no less true today. Right? The enemy comes to seek, to steal, to destroy, to kill. And we're fighting for the kingdom of God, and we're fighting for our families and for the next generation. So, and he goes on here and he posts them, and we might get into this a little bit more. I don't want to go too long on today's devotional, but again, just read over it, meditate it, let it speak to you, and please, share and comment what speaks to you today out of chapter 4, and the rest of it from 15 on. How Nehemiah meets this challenge. What does he do to face this challenge? And organizing everyone to work, not just to work with with rocks and a shovel in one hand, but they have a spear or a sword in the other, right? So he's putting them on guard. He's saying, okay, we're going to keep working. The work is not going to stop. It is not going to stop, but we are not going to ignore the threat either. We're going to take this threat seriously. And there seems to be no indication yet of Nehemiah even engaging these attackers, the people threatening him yet. He's engaging the Lord and he's engaging his people, but he's not engaging them yet. We get into chapter 6, he will, but so far we don't see him doing anything directly with them. So we'll stop it there for today, and we'll continue in Nehemiah chapter 5 tomorrow. God bless.